Now.
Then, is it in the beginning?
Probably makes you better.
Where did the word else, like, there's 3 2s, but
Yeah.
it was.
Hey, Mom, how are you?
I'm doing good yourself?
Good, thank you.
Good.
Awesome. And then that's what I.
Like sat down.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
Yeah, I don't want, so I don't know. But open to conversation. You should do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's usually handling this card, so Mary steps in.
You got us there.
Yeah. Yes.
Do we have?
I think it's
We have one, right? But I have not gotten any else like that.
Yeah.
What number did you call? Yeah, she called.
Yeah, we're trying like that.
How you doing, sir?
A graduation.
You kid went,
That's good.
so we got order the students out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely regardless.
When's your last day is Friday?
Yeah, officially. This is
Congratulations.
Oh, gosh, that's good.
Yeah.
It's
all.
Okay, like. Perfect, okay, I will update, thank you.
All right, I think we're gonna start on time here. Everybody's here on time. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for those that are joining us virtually. Whoa, look at that screen. Yeah.
I know, I was like,
Oh, they don't say anything. They're gonna pop up on it. Oh, man, this is gonna be really distracting. I've got to turn this way. Okay, so welcome everyone. This is a meeting of the Hamilton County Solid Waste Policy Committee, May 21st, 2025. As we typically do, let's go around the room so we know who is here at the meeting. Michelle, we'll start with you.
hey, Michelle Walton, the solid waste manager for Hamilton County Resource.
Greg Hesterman, Health Commissioner for Hamilton County.
Matt Waller, Township Representative, Lorraine Township.
Donald Peoples, general member.
Colleen McSwiggan, public member.
Mallory Garrissey, generator.
Sue Magnus, representative for the city of Cincinnati.
Mary Kruppenbaker, Assistant Solid Waste Manager with Hamilton County.
Lila.
Lila Foley, Commissioner from East Streethouse Office.
Hi, I'm Tony Stotler from the Hamilton County Resource.
Ashley Dove, Hamilton County Environmental Services.
Larry Falcon, local resident.
Lisa Van, local resident.
Tom Turchiano with Rumpke Waste Recycling.
Sharon Moore, from Hamilton County Resource. Nifong Sharon, Prosecutor's Office. Eric Jesselin, go ahead, sorry.
Sam Plants, Hamilton County Resource.
Harry Castellan, Southwest America.
Great, thank you all. Thank you all for being here. Okay, we're gonna, I'm gonna, make a motion to approve of the minutes of our previous session.
I will second, although my name was spelled wrong. So.
I was gonna ask if there's any discussion, so that's our discussion so
yeah.
far.
Just on that, page 2 in section A, you can take away that extra E. But other than that, I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion, any additions, deletions? All right, all those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. Public comment, I've got a speaker's card from Lisa Nguyen. Please come forward. You've got the pleasure of the floor for 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Lisa Wynn. I'm a member of the Ditch the Dump group and the Solid Waste Caucus. And Ditch the Dump has a following of over 1,700 citizens on the west side. I'm here today to make sure that you are aware of an article called Plastics Pollutions that was in the Cincinnati Enquirer back in February. Great deal thanks to Patricia Newberry Gallagher of the Cincinnati Enquirer, who did this article based on her own research and our documents, most being from the EPA records. The article covers the history of the Bond Road landfill and the impacts Monsanto's chemicals, now Enos, have on the western Hamilton County. Another source of the information is from the 2022 settlement between the state of Ohio and Monsanto, which was actually settled here in Hamilton County, in which Bond Road is listed for the concealment and toll that the PCBs played on the lives and natural environment in Ohio by this internationally banned chemical. The article covers local cancers and lifelong health impacts. It mentions closing of the elementary schools in the area and the impact on people's lives. Rumpke, in a statement, they sent out a flyer to the residents of the neighborhood saying, "Hello, neighbor." The document was sent to all the residents around the area and states that there was no testing done on the property. The newsletter further states that no hazardous materials were dumped on the site, which we now, based on the Ohio EPA documentation, is wrong. Rumpke has since removed all such information from their website on the Bond Road landfill page. But you should know that the Hamilton County landfill website directs people to the Bond Road neighborhood site, newsletter site, with this exact information. But since Rumpke's removed the Bond Road from their website, the link for Hamilton County website is no longer valid. The Hamilton County Public Health website states it's to educate and protect the residents, which I'm not real sure of. I have for all of you a flyer that we sent out to all the local residents with links to the articles, which I encourage all of you to read if you've not already done so. I also have a letter from a Vietnam veteran who lived on Bond Road and served his country. And he wrote to the EPA about all the scary things near the landfill by his home. If you have no reaction to this letter, I don't really know what to say. We went through public letters, emails, documents, filings, and articles with events that cannot be described as anything other than very disturbing. Because we can't understand how this is acceptable. The U.S. Center of Environmental Justice map shows a region of Whitewater Township where the low life expectancy is in the 99th percentile compared to the nation. Our hope is that the information that you will take concerning our health, our water, and our air more seriously. With this, I'm wondering if you've ever received a site plan for the entire property as required by regulators, because we've not seen it. Lastly, please stop dumping on the west side. Like I said, I have these documents if you're interested.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any comments online? What? We do.
You can copy the flyer.
From Julia.
Yeah, I have the actual
Okay.
flyers.
All right.
Yeah.
Julia,
Letter. That's
Thank you.
great.
Sorry, Julia, I remuted you.
thank you for joining. You've got the floor for 3 minutes.
Thank you. May I start?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Julia. I am one of the owners of Queen City Commons Cooperative. We are a community scale food scrap hauler here in Cincinnati and Hamilton County. Using our custom dump truck purchased with the help of the Hamilton County Resource Impact Grant, we collect residential and commercial food scraps, having collected 1.3 million pounds of food scraps since 2020. You may be wondering where all of these food scraps have gone. So in addition to hauling food scraps, we have also played a substantial part in co-building a decentralized network of composting sites across Cincinnati and Hamilton County. Due to the lack of compost processing infrastructure in Hamilton County, Queen City Commons has nurtured and grown partnerships with local farms, all within a 25-mile radius of Cincinnati's urban core, who compost all of the food scraps that we collect. Relying on farms has been crucial to keeping our food scraps local, and its decentralized nature is not something that we want to stray away from. We have dreams, too, of incorporating our own Queen City Commons compost site into this local network. This would allow us to not only haul food scraps, but also give us the opportunity to do some of the composting ourselves. Being that we are a small business, however, it can be extremely risky to take this leap, sourcing and purchasing land, remediating the land, and starting up an entire composting operation from scratch. In our minds, this is where Hamilton County Resource could really have an opportunity to continue to live up to their name and be a huge resource for Queen City Commons. Given their alignment with decentralized compost sites as a solution for the county and their access to market research, grant funding, and general municipal support, Queen City Commons strongly believes that Hamilton County Resources' next steps should be to source and own the land and equipment for a compost site, and subsequently contract out the operation of these sites to someone like us at Queen City Commons or any of the other very qualified compost operators here in town. This kind of structure would also allow the option for Hamilton County Resource to transition ownership to the leasee of the compost site further in the future. In this scenario, Hamilton County Resource would serve as a crucial stepping stone to owning a compost site operation. Hamilton County Resource has been absolutely pivotal in Queen City Commons' existence. They have supported our growth through grant funding, networking, connections, access to funding for compost education, mentorship, and the coalescing of all of the compost players in town, among other things. And we at Queen City Commons maintain that it would be in the best interest of the composters in Hamilton County for Hamilton County Resource to continue to support this important work in sourcing, owning, and leasing out compost sites, thus allowing those of us who are getting our hands dirty to continue to do this good work. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I assume you know we're gonna be talking about this on our agenda.
I do, yes.
All right, very good. That was, otherwise, it's very good timing. All right, so no other public comment, okay? Our next item is the resource revenue updates and analysis.
Yes, so this is just for the first quarter of 2025, and then we have the first quarter of 2024 to compare it to. Overall, the waste is down, so in-district waste is down about 2%. Out-of-district waste is down about 3.7%, and then out-of-state is up just very, like, less than 1%. So overall, slight decrease, but it's only 1 quarter. Any questions?
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to the policy items for discussion. We've got 2 things. One is the public member representation position, and we had a committee. And I'm gonna turn it to either Matt or Sue to talk about what happened in the committee and what the recommendation is.
Yeah, so Matt and I interviewed 2 candidates, Colleen and Larry Falcon. Both candidates very well qualified, very high knowledge of solid waste issues, very much civic minded. It was a hard decision. We did decide though to go with Colleen, in that she has, because of the learning curve, and it takes you a while to kind of get your feet wet before you really know what you want to do and where the things are. And so she says she still has work to be done. And so we, Matt and I decided that we believe that, we would like to recommend, Colleen, to serve another term.
Thank you.
Would you like to add to that, Matt?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the learning curve is a big part of this. I just don't think it would be fair to, as Lincoln said in 1864, switch horses in the middle of the stream.
Thank you.
Just, I know everybody's always offended by that comment, but it's a Lincoln quote. So.
I'm taking it.
Okay, but I think that's important, and I also think that since I've gotten here, the thing I most believe about more than anything else is that you have to change people's hearts first, and that's not a bottom down, that's a top up. It's a grassroots effort, and her commitment to grassroots change, I think, is admirable and kind of a big part of the model that is going to divert things to landfill. You know, I think we still have a lot of work to do with recycling and stuff like that, but I think Colleen's perfect for that. The other candidate, Lawrence Larry, was fantastic as well. There's really wasn't a bad decision here. It's, because usually in government, you know, when I teach it to my kids, I said, look, it's not a good decision versus a bad, it's usually a bad versus bad. I had the honor of having a good versus good this time, and I very much appreciate that strong candidate, so, but I completely concur with Sue and think like to recommend Colleen as well.
And I would just echo that, you know, Larry's experience and background in solid waste management is invaluable. And I would highly encourage him to apply again.
And so, as a reminder, the statutory members are the ones that vote on this position. So I too want to thank Larry for throwing your name in the hopper. Larry and I have known each other for many years, and he is a true advocate for the environment and all things. And so I really do appreciate your interest. I'm also glad that you are interested in continuing to serve in this position. So I'm happy to go along with the recommendation of the group. Do you have any comments before we move?
No.
All right, so in that case,
I'll motion, and you me too. I'll motion to, when it would be the expiration of this.
Yeah.
2-year, renew, Ms. McSwigan for a 2-year term as the public advocate.
And I'll second that motion.
all right, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very, thanks for your work on that.
Thank you.
And thank you, Larry,
Thank you.
for your interest. Okay. The next item is the future organics processing and waste reduction program. So we have been talking about this item for, I feel like as long as I've been here. I don't know how long that's been, but we've talked a lot about organics, it's part of our 5-year plan. We had a great deal of interest from the city in collaboration relating to organics collection in the county. And so we embarked upon a study to try to understand what, under what scenario we would best do this work. Is it a large facility? Is it smaller facilities? Who would build it? Who would pay for it? Who would operate it? All these kinds of things. And so I am glad that we are at this moment in time where we're talking about a recommendation or rather a report out on organics. So with that, Michelle, I'm going to turn it over to you to go through the report.
So I'm going to go over the organics processing feasibility study report really briefly because it's already been out there. We've already presented on it. I'm going to talk about the Institute for Local Self-Reliance supplement to that study, and then talk a little bit about how our current fee status, or current carryover balance, how a fee increase would work, and the timeline for that. So unfortunately, I can't see my notes, so we'll see how good I remember what I was supposed to say. So the phase 1 and 2 of the organics feasibility study, it looked at what the current landscape is, what facilities we currently have, the class 4 composting facilities. We have quite a bit of yard trimmings composting happening, and I'll talk a little bit about that in the next slide too. Had a lot of stakeholder engagement from the surrounding solid waste districts, from interested stakeholders, and talked a little bit about the feedstocks. So how much material could we potentially divert, and what would that look like? It went into case studies, so there was a whole chapter on these are kind of best practices for communities that want to implement these kinds of programs. Looked at all the different technologies out there for composting and other organics diversion, and made recommendations mainly in aerated static piles and in vessel technology, because we are such an urban county and want to make sure that this facility is a good neighbor and is not going to be creating a nuisance. And then also what markets are out there for compost. So this is from the study, and my notes say exactly what page. I don't remember exactly what page, but this is in phase 1 and 2 report. And so if you look here, this goes over the composting sites or in the anaerobic digestion sites. The red shape here is was the only class 2 composting site that was at Finley Market. They are no longer an active compost site. They needed that land for their offices, so they are now contracting with Queen City Commons, who gave a public comment. So they're still diverting their organics, they're just not doing it on site. So we no longer have a class 2, which is the food scrap composting site. Sorry, so the class 3s are the orange shapes. Class 3s take yard trimmings and animal manure. You can see a few of those scattered about. There's one plan, which is that orange circle up there. That is at Great Parks at Parky's Farm in order to compost their animal manure from Parky's Farm in partnership with the Cincinnati Biochar Project. So that is planned. That should be coming soon. And then you go up to class 4, which are yard trimmings composting sites. You can see we have quite a bit of those. I think we have 14 yard trimmings composting sites, and 9 of those are operated by local communities. So you can see we have those around. And then there's the 2 white dots, which I apologize, are kind of hard to see. Those are anaerobic digesters. At the time that this report was out, they were still planned, but we do have one that's operating, which is Syntheca there in St. Bernard. And they are estimated to be able to take about 190,000 tons. Now, a lot of that is liquid organic material. But they have said that they will have about 30,000 tons of capacity to take pre-consumer food scraps. So they could take, they do not want post-consumer food scraps. They want the really clean stuff that's not gonna contaminate their process. And then you have Divert, which is, they're building out in Harrison. And that is going to be mainly targeted to grocery stores. So the salt considered that capacity, what capacity we currently have and with what we would need. The other thing I'd like to point out are the green squares. Those are our small and medium scale composters. 3 of those are the farms that we worked with at the USDA project. But we have quite a bit of interest and growing interest in the small and medium scale composting. So the phase 3 report is the most recent. And that looked at potential sites. Now, that is to say, it's not that saying Hamilton County should buy sites. It was mainly looking at, do these sites exist? And is there some perfect magic site out there that we could potentially look at? They did focus on publicly owned sites. They considered brownfield sites, and then any sites where people were coming to us and saying, hey, we have a site, you may want to consider it. So they considered 15 different criteria. They did pull together in that report the opinion of probable costs ranging from 7 million to 14 million for a facility. You can see that broken down in the report. And they had a recommendation that we put out if Hamilton County wants to move forward with purchasing land, because there wasn't a perfect, oh, this is the site we think you should do, that we would put out a request for interest in order to find more land and possibly look at just land that's just for sale. The other supplement to that was the Institute for Local Self-Reliance recommendations. Because phase 1 and phase 2 came with more decentralized approach. The Institute for Local Self-Reliance put together recommendations on how Hamilton County could support small scale and medium scale community composting. They mainly came with 3 recommendations. The first was to partner with farmers, which is obviously something that we're doing with the USDA grant. But if you think about it, farmers have land, they have equipment, and they have a need for soil amendment, right? They value compost to make their soils and their product better. So they actually need that for their business. So that is a great suggestion, partner with farmers. They recommended that we increase fees in order to specifically fund organic programs. And they were very specific in that the funds taken in should benefit the people paying the fee. That was the specific language that they had in there. And that the funds should be towards smaller community scale projects. The last 2 bullets are all about ways that we could support community composters with technical assistance, with buying land or helping to prepare sites. and also supporting communities, installing food scrap drop-offs. So that kind of leaves the reports behind, but anytime that we're talking about diverting organics from the landfill, I'm obligated to talk about working higher up in the hierarchy, not just composting. Even though that's what the report was focused on, we also want to think about a holistic approach where we are also focusing on reducing wasted food first. That is the best, most environmentally beneficial thing that we can do. Where you, mainly how we work in this space is campaigns, consumer facing campaigns to encourage food waste reduction. And then you want to rescue that food and feed hungry people with it. That is the next most preferred method. Luckily in our area, we have some really great food rescue organizations that are doing amazing work. We're already supporting them. But continuing to support them and even upping that support. The Institute for Local Self-Reliance has this hierarchy, which is based on the US EPA's hierarchy, but they further break down the composting, which I think is interesting since we're talking so much about composting. They, home composting is the next best thing that you can do if you have to compost it, because you don't have that greenhouse gas impact of, driving those food scraps away. And then if you can't do that, the small scale decentralized approach of community gardens or smaller operations, then building up to medium and larger scale and anaerobic digestion. So sorry, it's not the easiest to read, but this is a trend of our solid waste fund. So this is the big green shape is the carryover balance, basically. The dark green line is our 8 months operating. So we are required to have 8 months operating in order. So the idea there is if, say Rumpke said, we're shutting down tomorrow and not going to take any more waste, we would have 8 months to figure out a new way to fund, to get these. And then the red line is expenses, and then the yellow line is revenue. So right now we have about 1.6 million over that 8 months operating of spendable carryover. So with that spendable carryover funds, there's a few things that we have in attachment C that come from a variety of different sources. They come from the feasibility study, from ILSR's recommendations, from just meeting with stakeholders, from the Beyond 34 initiative, if you remember that initiative, and just staff brainstorming, knowing things. That's all kind of compiled into attachment C. Attachment C is not meant to be, these are the programs we're going to do. It's just meant to be, this is kind of an idea of what scope of programs we could do with just the carryover balance in our current staffing. And then if the policy committee wanted to increase fees, what those programs could look like. So it was not intended to be all inclusive. However, I would say the kind of sole recommendation of staff is that we do start today and spend some of that carryover getting something started, regardless of whether the fee increase moves forward or not. So in the wasted food reduction area, school partnerships is one idea that we have in there. And believe it or not, school cafeterias are the biggest chain of food operators in the US. They actually serve more meals than McDonald's. And a large portion of Hamilton County residents go there every day to learn. And so the idea of this program would be to create teacher stipends and create a program to integrate reducing wasted food education into the schools. We know that teachers are busy, they've got a lot going on. If we just created a curriculum and we're like, hey, we think we should do this, it's not going to take off. There's going to be a few that'll do it, but in creating teacher stipends has been something we did with the World Wildlife Fund that really took hold and made that valuable. So creating school partnerships. In this idea, we would create a small pilot for like 5 teachers for this year to figure out all of the details and then expand that program. The other thing, we already have a very robust campaign on reducing wasted food, called Wasted Food Stops With Us. We could put more money in that. We usually spend about $75,000 to $100,000 a year. We could double that and have a greater impact.
Michelle, back on the school stipends, are you thinking $6,000 stipends for 5 teachers? Is that,
And part of the pilot would be figuring out the right amount.
got it?
Yeah. So the next level on the hierarchy is supporting food rescue. We've met with quite a few food rescue organizations, trying to get their input on what would be the most beneficial, and money is gonna be the most beneficial for them. They want a large grant program, so we're recommending, $500,000 to start, and just for food rescue. All of the organics grants that we've done so far, we've given a lot of our innovation grants and impact grants to food rescue, but they've always also included composting and other things. So if we just focus on food rescue and really try to support their efforts. The other idea that was out there is subsidizing their food scrap collection. And the idea here is food rescue organizations often get dumped on. They get loads of product that is not edible by humans. And they are then have the burden of having to pay for that disposal. So one way we can support them is by paying for the composting of those food scraps. So not only are we supporting the food rescue organization, but we're also supporting local compost. And then finally, there is a lot of ways we can support local composting infrastructure. These are, they're listed in here in the in attachment C. Having a large grant, I listed 500,000 to start. I think that would be a great start, although I think we would need more eventually to make a really big impact. We have the residential recycling incentive grant that we give to communities every year. If we had a bonus part of that where it was just for organics collection for communities, I think that would be really helpful. If we did the large infrastructure grant and didn't increase fees, I would want to set aside a certain amount of money just for communities to do food scrap drop-offs. I think that would help them in order to get those more established. We already have a few communities to do it. Colerain Township was the first to do food scrap drop-off, but we have a few that are working on it and do it, but I think we could get more if we offer that grant. Partnering farms obviously is a really beneficial avenue, and there's lots of ideas in there. You can certainly read through them yourself. The final idea was having a model site. So one of the problems and barriers we're facing, and that we've heard, is that we just don't have anything operating right now, right? If you can't see it, you can't envision it of what it could look like. And so the idea here is we don't have $7 million on hand to build a facility, but what if we created a model facility that was a mini site, right? That's only taking like 150 tons a year, not a huge site. And luckily we do have a composter operating on land owned by the Board of County Commissioners. They are operating a very small site, and it's also for orchards. So it's a common orchard project operating that site. Most of the site is dedicated to a perennial farm and a greenhouse, but they do have a composting operation, and they create compost for their operations. And so they already operating a compost site. It's under 500 square feet. We could invest in infrastructure on that site, like a concrete driveway and things to approve that site. It would be about $200,000. And it could be a really nice little site. It's never going to be a big site. They're not going to be taking a whole lot of material, but it could be a site where a community or someone who is interested in that could go and look at it and say, oh, this is what it looks like. I think that if you can see it and you can smell it and you can be like, oh, this is what it could be. It's also nice, I think, that it is a multi-use site. It's not just for composting. That said, we have just started that process of reaching out to facilities and River City Correctional. We would want to make sure that everybody in the Camp Washington Urban Redevelopment who has that lease with Board of County Commissioners, make sure everybody was on board. So can't promise that, but that is one idea for helping with infrastructure. I threw this in there because I thought it would be helpful for you to understand when our next plan update, happens. So we are officially set to start our next plan update August 21st, 2027. Which would lead us to plan approval in 2028 and likely the next goal, probably 2030, maybe 2029. So we're looking at the next plan update probably being in 2030. We can start that process earlier if we want, but that is what the height of case timeline is for us. Okay, so I'm gonna talk a little bit about our fees. Right now, we have the lowest allowable disposal fees for material. Most of the revenue is coming from material that is going to Lucky Sanitary Landfill. We receive $1 for waste generated in district. So within Hamilton County, we receive $2 for waste generated out of district, but still within the state of Ohio. And we receive $1 for waste generated out of state. The probably, I think 70% of, so half of the waste is coming from out of district and out of state about, and about 70% of the revenue is from out of district. And I have these in my notes, and I think Butler County is sending about 60% of that. I think Warren County is another 20, so most of it's coming from Butler and Warren counties. Claremont and Montgomery counties are about 5% each. The maximum that Ohio Revised Code says that we can put a disposal fee is 242. So $2 in district, $4 out of district, $2 out of. This is a hypothetical if the policy committee wanted to move forward with increasing fees, what that would look like. So you would have to put a resolution. I have some sample resolutions for you if that's the way you want to move. So you would put a resolution out saying that you want to increase fees. We would have to put a public notice out, and we would have to put in that public notice a copy of the resolution and the date of the public hearing. That has to go similar to who receives the plan update. So it has to go to like the 50 waste generators, the communities, there's a whole list of that has to go to. So I would recommend that public hearing be before the next policy committee in August. So you can maybe have it like the hour before. And then the policy committee would decide, do you want to make any changes to that based on public input? Then you would put another resolution out saying, okay, we are adopting this fee. That's when it would go out to the legislative bodies. So it would go out to the 48 political jurisdictions and the Board of County Commissioners. You have to get approval from the Board of County Commissioners, from the city of Cincinnati as the largest municipality, and from communities representing 60% of the population. The difference between this and a plan update is that if a community does not vote on this, it is considered a yes vote. So they either, with the plan update, if they don't vote on it, it's considered a no vote.
Is that proportional voting? So the 60%, is that one vote for community or proportional?
It's proportional based on population.
Okay. Of the total amount that vote, well, so a no vote, a non-vote is a yes, so that would be included in the.
In the yes.
Okay. And in the total at the bottom. Yeah, okay, well, thank you.
So then so that, I think it's 60 days they have to approve that. And then we would gather that data based on whether we got the 60% or not, got all the necessary votes. At the November meeting, the policy committee would put another resolution declaring that the fee is approved. And then the first time that the fees would be collected would be January 1, 2026. So a few next steps, like I said, staff is recommending no matter what how this moves forward, whether the fees are increased or not, that we use some of the carryover balance to do some immediate programs to reduce the organics going to the landfill. And finally, I think the main questions in front of you today are, what role should Hamilton County Resource and Hamilton County in general have in improving organics diversion? Should that be buying land? Should that be grants? you've heard all of the recommendations. And then, does Hamilton County need to increase the disposal fees to achieve that goal? So I will open it up for questions.
Okay, so, yeah, I just want to back up and say what brought us here was our desire to divert organics from landfill. That goes without saying. We're all, because we've been talking about this so long, I don't want to miss the forest through the trees. Can you go back to the financial part where you had the graph with the lines and the carryover? My question is, the expenses were higher than the revenue. We're spending down the carryover to a point where we're nearing what we need by the ORC to have in reserve. So at what point in time do we then, we get ourselves in trouble here if we're spending more than we're bringing in? Because of that line, you can see how it crossed, right? And so that's not sustainable, is what I'm thinking, just to say it out loud. So it is the change there in expenses, the increase in expenses, is that when we started doing some of the grants and we started doing outward facing, collaboration with organizations? So that's what that represents.
Most
right?
of that is, let's spend $500,000 on an impact grant to
Yeah.
spend down the carryover.
Yeah, we made them larger than what we had previously awarded so that larger projects could be considered.
Right, so again, understand, just not sustainable if we're gonna keep that balance intact for a few more years. So in order to even continue doing what we're doing, we're gonna need to find a new revenue source, right? Or do something related to our expenses. In other words, decrease what we're doing. Okay, so
That was
that's,
like one time.
well, one time, but then we kept doing it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, so I mean, one time ongoing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
more than one time. Okay, so I just wanna make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So if we then say to ourselves, the only way, well, one of the ways to increase the revenue then is to increase fees. So we can continue to do this work and partner with the community and do what we've been doing. How much, if we were to go from 121 to 242, how much revenue would be generated annually?
It would be about 7.2 theoretically. I did meet with a few representatives from Rumpke to ask, how would it affect if we increased fees? Would it affect waste flow, right? Would we be getting less? And when I say we getting, would less waste be going into RSL? And so that would mean Rumpke Sanitary Landfill, which would mean less revenue. And they said it would be it really wouldn't affect the waste flows. Where it would affect is if there was a special project, say in Claremont County, that was the same distance between Brown County and Hamilton County. That it might go to Brown County instead if with that fee increase. One thing I didn't note, because I didn't have access to my notes, was that this fee is paid for by the waste generator. So this is not a fee to Rumpke. Rumpke passes that on to their customers. So this would be a fee to the city of Cincinnati bringing the residents waste. So it would be a fee to Procter and Gamble, who's, creating the waste. So that fee is directly even line item on their bill. And when you do the per capita, just for the in district, it's about $1.20 per capita that you're talking about annually.
Okay. And I don't want to monopolize this, but I just want to get to the financial piece. So do we then also have an option to, instead of doing a 242, we could do a 1.5, 1.5, something like that. So we've got some options there by way of how much we need to generate. Okay, and I've got some other questions, but I don't want to monopolize conversation. So who else has questions related to this?
A couple of points, that I think apply to a couple of these things that we're interested in doing. First of all, the teacher stipend. Just as someone who sees teacher stipends on a regular basis for the last 25 years, I hate stipends because they get taxed at self-employment tax, and then you get taxed at income tax. And when you're talking $1,200, you're gonna maybe clear $6,000. I tend to gravitate towards stipends that are classroom materials, grants to the school. And that's something that allows more kick with that spending. And I don't know, maybe that's the choice you offer people, but I don't think I've done a stipend it's a cash stipend for like 15 years, because it messes up my taxes. At the end of the day, I'm like, wait, I did all this for that much?
I'd rather have a $50 Kroger gift card.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And usually, to be honest with you, the stipend, whatever they send out, the W-10s or whatever they are, usually come after I filed my taxes, so I have to refile. It couldn't be a bigger pain in the neck. With owning a site, so one of the things that I picked up, and I talked to Mr. Schutte from Cintiqa for about a half an hour the other day. He was kind enough, the CEO of Cintiqa, he's kind enough to share some time. I think one of the reasons there are two reasons that St. Bernard was kind of on board with that. Number one, it was a very industrial area, but number two, the community got a JED from it. If the county's gonna own the land, that takes away any kind of ideas of having a JED or doing anything is kind of a carrot for the community there. And I think that makes a difference. And the other thing with siting is, and I checked Colerain for this, is that zoning. So a level type 2 a compost facility actually gets treated in zoning purposes as a solid waste site. So in Colerain, you're zoned out of Colerain. So you couldn't say, hey, we have the county owns this land here, it's zone government. We're gonna put it there. It would have to be rezoned for solid waste. And our zoning already says that if any solid waste landfills are done or increased, then our zoning actually says they have to be on Rumpke's current property. So I don't know how many different cities, villages, or townships have their own zoning that would apply for them as well. So that gets complicated too. So when we talk about the universe of things where it can be put, if we're gonna pursue something like that, I mean, for me, first of all, Colerain's out because we have it zoned out. But if it was if you didn't come with a JED, I'm not interested, because I don't have any. I have to tell my residents, hey, you're gonna compost, but then you're gonna save landfill space, but then the response is about the smell and the other things that, I mean, if you have trucks going over the roads, those wear down the roads much more quickly. And I think that's just a practical problem that you have with it. Cintiqa said that they spent over $20 million on smell abatement alone for theirs, because it's such a significant issue. So some practical stuff to kind of big picture, or I guess some of the individual things that we have listed.
Other comments?
Yeah.
I actually had a question. So when I was doing some of the research on this, I found a 2022 Ohio EPA report of all the tipping fees for all of Ohio. But they were much higher, so I'm assuming there were other fees included in that, like Hamilton County's average for the Rumpke landfill was $42 per ton. And I couldn't find anything to say, like, what else is making up that total. When I was kind of just looking through things and thinking, okay, $1, $2, $1, basically doubling that's a pittance compared to everything else in that fee. But I couldn't see what else was included in that and how volatile the rest of those fees could be.
I think the state takes part too.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the state, I think last I looked, it was like $4.50, but don't quote me on
Okay.
that.
Yeah, the
But
state.
yeah,
gets
they
part
also
too.
Okay. So I guess maybe the other fees might just be what Rumpke charges customers just to be able to provide the service that. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, the cost of the airspace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm thinking that, we still need to move forward, with finding that location. I think that, not looking at private land, what might make the search a little too narrow. Although it would have been sweet to find government land.
Yeah.
But, everyone is going for that, so that's gonna be harder. So I would like to see that the net widened on the search. I think we need to go with like the 8 acre site so that it could have the other infrastructure, and have Ollie do some analysis of what is it gonna take us to at least get to the first static aerobic, wait a minute, ASP, what's that?
Aerated static pipes.
Yeah, aerated static pipe, yeah, to get to the one. And that also is that considered, because there's 3 of them medium still? I mean, because we don't want industrial for sure size, we're just talking still medium sizes.
Yeah.
And I like the idea from a policy standpoint, staying at the medium and small, because we can have more of them and we reduce more of the source 3 emissions, the transportation getting it there. So the more, a lot of small ones is great, but it's just not gonna get us to where we really need to be, as the consultants recommended, that we actually need 3 of the ASP systems. So I would like to, so I believe that we do need to do an increase in fees. But maybe if we stand one up, we don't need to fund all 3 at once, is what I'm kind of getting at. That we could fund one, get it standing, and then go for the second one, and third one if it's needed.
Yeah.
But I think we still need that first one to even complement aerobic digestion, so that, because they're the only ones who could possibly take the digestate, right, and do something with it that's coming from the anaerobic digesters. Because they're landfilling all the digestate coming out of it. Those are energy producers.
Yeah.
They're not trying to divert waste.
Yeah.
And so, but if we have a local place for them to take it, then they will. They won't landfill it. They'll take it to our ASP stack piles. And also I think our experience with Compost Cincy was, if we build it, the organic generators are gonna come out of the woodwork. I mean, we know a lot of them, this is gonna be a very busy, very, very busy facility. And as through Project 34 and even convenings before that, all the local composters have let us know that the land is the biggest hurdle.
Yeah.
So I would really like to widen our net on the land search, find that first 8-acre site. And Ollie, let us know the numbers, but, so that's kind of where I'm at.
I would agree with that, and I would be interested to see what would come out of an RFI process from that perspective.
Mhm.
I also thought it was weird that they only focused on public lands instead of private.
Yeah.
To your point, I mean, to everybody's point, it doesn't make sense to just focus on public lands. I mean, we see what's going on in Harrison, that's private. So I agree. So I think we need more information related to the availability of sites.
I can't find space for 10 recycling carts on public land.
Yeah.
I was looking at this chart and thinking about what a year we're in. It's a very uncertain year from my lens. The federal government's making some very vast policy changes. Seems like state government is also in their budget being fairly aggressive, and there's now talk of eliminating property tax, which is potentially a huge risk to the local governments around the state. I'm not super excited about making this a year of huge change, maybe making this a year of watching carefully and positioning ourselves for where we want to go next year and see where the dust settles. Maybe the year won't turn out as bad as some are anticipating if some of these state changes go into place. So just one perspective. The other thing, I don't think I hear the committee saying they want to own a facility. I personally have no interest in the district owning a facility. I think that is messy as us being an advisory board to then a property or a business that we own. And the last question I have is around if we were to pursue fee increases. I know that the communities use Rumpke and they would then see the pass-through fees, so their budgets would be impacted in a year where there's potentially property tax budget implications. Have you heard anything from any of the communities? Are they generally supportive? Is Colerain supportive? Is Cincinnati, being probably the largest community, are they supportive of seeing an increase to your solid waste disposal fees? Is there any feedback?
I have not gotten any feedback, although I looked it up. Colerain would see about a $20,000 increase based on how much waste their residents were landfilling, and Cincinnati would be about a $72,000 increase.
Yeah, and increasing waste fees to discourage landfilling and increasing recycling is actually one of the things, one of the recommendations in our current approved Green Cincinnati plan. So I would say yes.
Do your residents pay the fee directly or is it a hidden in the
Our-
taxes?
Our residents get free garbage collection.
So they would
So
never
they will not
necessarily,
see it.
yeah. All right.
The other thing I was looking at it on this. Page 3, the citing is on page 13, the cost opinion summary, and it puts a cost at. $49.40 per ton. For the processing fee, and that seems. For the data I looked at, because this isn't gonna be really clean or high quality compost, it's gonna be more towards the lower end. That seems like it'd be cheaper just to pay people than create a drop off place or something like that, or to contract with someone. I mean, because we're talking, what's the value of this type of compost is less than $20, right?
I would guess, so that I know that there was a whole chapter on the compost markets in the first report, but yeah, I'm not sure how much, but it's typically undervalued.
So it seems like the more it would be used, the more bleeding will happen. And if we hit a statutory ceiling on the tipping fees, then we've got an issue. Not now, maybe in 5 or 10 or 15 years. But when I saw the 49.50, and to be honest with you, some of the building, or I guess that does not, and it doesn't include the construction of the sites. And when the big site came up at 20 million, I kind of thought that was a little bit low. Because construction stuff is just going way. Coal Range just paid almost, a little less than 20 million for 2 fire stations, and probably 10 years ago, they would have been 6 million apiece. So that, and then what's the law of economics? Once it goes up, it never comes back down. People have a reason to keep it higher. So that concerned me. It's like, well, it's gonna be a long bleed out at 40, because every ton that's produced, you're losing $30 or more.
So to this, the question of cost, so never mind the land. If we were to agree that we don't want to do large or small, but rather medium, and I'm looking at the report, what is the cost then, just generally speaking, for building out? I too don't wanna own this. What would be the cost of building out a medium-sized facility?
So Craig Coker estimated a base of 7 million up to 14 million.
Yeah, depending on how rural or industrial or urban the site is.
And Michelle, I know we've talked about this before, and this idea of whether or not there's a market on the private side to do this, because there's money to be made in doing this. And so the question of siting was always like, well, if we could site it, maybe the privates would come in and build it and operate it, and our role would be siting it. So I know we've talked about that before. I just want to keep that in the back of my mind as to whether or not there is a private side developer that would pay the cost to build this thing, and would also reap the benefits, right, of building it themselves. So it just wanted, because I think that was one of the models we had talked about a long time ago when we
Oh,
talked
yeah.
about the plan in general.
Yeah, I think that once we have the site, then we'll find out if somebody's willing to invest, or if we have to invest a little bit more for the equipment. Yeah. Cause then we would, hey, we have this site, and then we would invite, invite people to submit proposals, right? How would you develop this site? We want an ASP site, what would you do? And then we would take the one that was the proposal that probably was cheaper, right?
Yeah.
To us.
Does that involve the county on the site?
Well, we can either, I think we can own the site without owning the whole business.
Like we could lease the land
Lease the
to
land.
somebody else.
I think we have to buy the land. I think it has to be bought. Yeah, cause it can't be
Then-
temporary. Nobody's gonna come and say, I'm gonna build a $7 million property on this land that you have at least 2 years on.
Yeah, but it could be kind of a lease to own sort of what.
Yes, I think a lease to own would be perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One other question I had too, Michelle, and I don't know if you knew the answer to this. I think the estimates that were in there, they were saying it was for positive air pressure for the static piles. Is there any appreciable difference in cost if you do negative air pressure to keep the smell down?
I don't know the answer to that. Do you mean if you were like sucking the air and
instead of-
for a filter? I
Yeah.
don't know the answer to
Okay.
that. I've got to ask Craig.
Okay,
But owning the property and having the partnership will give us far more control over what type of odor control techniques and shutting it down quicker.
Yeah.
If needed,
Yeah.
it would give us more power.
hoping that we would have learned the lesson. Last time. I was involved in that, but.
If they
yeah,
took in more, then they could process.
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments or questions?
I will say I really like the idea of the model site. So Tony was nice enough to take me up to the Dayton Food Bank 2 years ago, 3 years ago, something like that. And that was amazing and kind of mind blowing. They had an investment composter there, about half the size of a semi trailer, if I remember correctly. And I think that could go a long way to reassuring people that there are ways to do composting without it being stinky.
I agree. We kind of ride both horses.
Yeah.
Where I think the model site will be important for education and to gain community support. Where, I remember 25 years ago trying to teach people about composting and there was not a single compost bin in sight anywhere,
Yeah.
And so we, established the first compost demonstration site was actually at Avon Woods, where we set up 6 bins just so people can see, this is what a home recycling or a home composting bin looks like. People have to see it to get it.
I agree. The only way I've gained any traction on the zoo and getting some discussions going is to go and see sites that are already doing it. And
Yeah.
smell it, and touch it and feel it, and get a sense for how it works. So
Yeah.
I think the schools present an interesting opportunity too, because I think you have a captive audience. And you have young people who will develop it as habits.
Yeah.
About 20 years ago, I first went to Earlham College in Richmond, Indiana. I don't know how long they'd been doing it, but they were already. Doing put the food scraps in one bin and I had never seen anything like that. It was like 1999 or 2000. So. I think that does provide a captive audience for the stipend aside. And that might be a good place to start. It kind of, as an aside, what came out of this, I'm thinking through all this stuff and, I don't have a scientific background on this. I'm just more like, what's common sense kind of policy. One of the things I noticed is still what a big problem water bottles are. And we're talking not compost here, but I took a look at Elder on the second floor about 3 years ago. It was the last one to put in the bottle refill thing. And it tabulates how many bottles have been saved. It's not been in there 3 years and it's up to like 88,000 bottles saved. Which is just an incredible lever if you think about it. And I was talking to somebody who, I was talking to you about your kids at Walnut, right? You didn't know if Walnut didn't have it in place, is that true?
I can't say that for sure. They're
Yeah.
allowed to bring bottles of water. They're
Right,
allowed
right.
to bring water bottles, but I don't know if they have like the old school drinking fountains or
Well, part of this,
The ones where you can actually fill them up all the way.
Yeah.
Pushing you up with the measure.
Drinking fountains.
Yeah.
The
But-
kids at Walnut are getting water.
but this changed. It used to be that you didn't allow students to have water. Now I think probably uniformly, maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, that started to switch. I mean, think about, and I know that we talked about how there are grant programs available. I don't know how well schools and school districts know that. And then if you add to it government buildings. I like low hanging fruit. I like successes that. So this is aside from the compost issue, but I think that we haven't figured out recycling yet, which is kind of frustrating. And if you talk to Rumpke, they talk about how much stuff goes in recycling that shouldn't go there. It's incredible.
So I wanna talk about next steps. So there are two things that I think we need to figure out. One is this expansion of, if we're gonna think about participating by way of what our partnership is in that siting, then we need to expand the search to a different site. So can we all agree to that, that we're not quite where we need to be right now?
Yeah.
All right, so that's number one. The other one, I'm still hyper focused on this revenue expenses chart, because it doesn't square. And so if we need to do one of two things in the near future. We either need to increase our revenues or decrease our expenses, or our reserve's gonna dip below where we want it to be. So I just wanna say that out loud. And so, and the things that we're funding are things that reduce or divert waste from the landfill, right? So they're all good things. We all agreed to do this. It's a matter of sustaining it. And so what do we need to think about by way of revenue? Is it a fee increase? Is there a different way to get to it? Or is that, the fee increase we talked about, if my recollection is correct, because it generates quite a bit of money. We talked about that by way of organics, right? Because we knew it would be an expensive proposition, especially if we were the ones building it, right?
Yeah.
So that's how we talked about that fee increase. But it seems to me that we need to think about revenue if we're gonna continue the general stuff that we're doing. So I would like to get an analysis from staff on what the options are for us by way of generating revenue, if it's just straight out fee increase, or if there are other things that we should think about. And I think it might be helpful because we've got some newer members to remind ourselves of what we are funding with that outside of our statutory, obligations. What is that piece where you saw the lines cross? Right, and I think it's good work, and I'm not suggesting we stop doing it, I just wanna make sure it's sustainable. So,
So we did a very similar analysis while we were doing the plan, so we can revisit that and update it with, with the last few years, and we can present that at the office.
Yeah, I'd have to brush up, but we did talk about the fee increases before in different scenarios. And so I'm kind of like thinking the low hanging fruit is to increase tier two, which is out of district. Because that one is not gonna impact our local businesses. It will just, although it's not really gonna discourage waste, but in theory, it could discourage waste from coming here. But it probably won't. But then we could get potentially an extra $2 per ton to help fund the first ASP.
We can't just. We
What?
can't
We have to
just
keep the
increase out of
ratio.
district.
It has to
Yeah.
stay all the.
So what?
So we have
It
to
has
keep the
to stay the
scale,
same.
so anything that we increase out of district, we have to also increase.
Well, for this,
for
well,
proportion. Does that
oh,
make
really,
sense?
for all three? Cause I realized that we had to keep in district and out of state. But why do we have to keep them all proportional?
I could ask Ohio EPA to talk about that.
Okay.
But yeah,
Cause I thought we
everyone who has fees, they're always,
right, but I've never found anything.
Two or.
Yeah, if you can get clarification then, cause I thought we really could just raise tier two.
Yes, did I.
Right, and cause I've been through all the statutes. And I don't see why we can't.
and I've always understood it that we can't. So yeah, let's get clarity.
Yeah, let's get clarity.
Yeah,
So then, because it would be, for me, although eventually, I think we have to get to the max, but if we wanted to start slow on local, that would be my preference.
Well, in the projections, it looked like it was 2026 was where those lines were gonna be crossing, so I feel like we might need to do something today so that it can start 2026. So,
Yeah, every district has their fee structured that way, where it's, half of what the out of district is, except one who has it flat across the board. It's 2-2-2.
See,
you
so they're not
can't-
proportional,
But all the other ones are proportional.
Yeah.
So,
but they don't have to be, so you could just raise two.
I don't know that you could, because it sounds like two could be the same as in district or out of state, but you can't have that proportion like higher
Yeah, right.
than the other two, more than double than that. It sounds like,
Okay,
based on what other rates actually are.
right, so you can go higher, just not more than 2 times higher.
Right.
Okay. Okay, so So committee. We've got a couple things that we've asked Michelle to do and to present to us. I shared this concern about lack of revenue and what it means to our programming. So if we were to get the information from you at our next meeting, and be prepared to vote related to a fee increase, the fee increase, I really do think that if we're gonna generate $7.2 million through a fee increase, we should probably have a plan as to how we're gonna do that, or how we're gonna spend that, because I think it's gonna be a tough sell. Because, we've got a lot of elected officials that would have, to your point, Greg, that would have to vote on this. If there's not a reason to make this kind of increase, I think there's gonna be some trepidation about that. So I just throw that out because I think I was uncomfortable from the very beginning about this, that to raise fees for what, right, well, there's no plan yet, so that's a tough sell. So I just do feel like we need to get a little further down the road, to put a plan in place, and whether it is a combination of maybe site and also these programs that we've got that we have to fund, or that we want to fund to divert items from the landfill. We need to be really explicit about that, because we're asking all these communities to vote for an increase. I think it's gonna be a tough sell if we don't have a plan in place.
Yeah, but I do think that it's not a big increase though. So I thought you said it was $1.20 per person per year. Yeah.
I understand, but in the context of all that's going on,
Yeah,
people aren't gonna hear that.
yeah,
They're just gonna hear an increase.
yeah.
So I just want to be very cautious about how we present this, what the case is for it, so that we don't lose that conversation.
Yeah.
So I don't, what about time? So I guess it comes down to a matter of timing then, in some ways. What is the timing related to what we're currently doing and when we need to generate more revenue, as opposed to this larger question of the organics facility?
So if we put off until the August meeting of doing any resolution, all that does is push the time that you be collecting new fees down the same amount of time. We could shrink that timeline, because, so say you resolved today that you wanted to increase fees, we put that out there. It's supposed to be 30 days before the public comment period. So we could have a special meeting and shrink that timeline, so it wouldn't be, 6 or 8 months, it could be shortened.
The chart Michelle showed though had dates all the way through 2027. We're not close to being like at a negative balance. We've got.
Can we bring that?
I think it's switched over to 2026.
We're spending more than we're bringing in.
Yes, and the
but
reserve is,
it's shrinking, but we haven't even hit the reserve by 2027.
unless I thought we were close to having that reserve right where it needs to be.
And Ally and Ashley are here, they are the ones who generate this chart, they would be able to.
Can you help us with our timing question?
Yeah, I'm, wanna see if I can look at that, yeah, you're probably talking about somewhere between 26 and 27, when that's gonna probably go into that.
Yeah, okay,
What the circumstance.
okay.
I can't get into my F drive, so I couldn't really pull up any numbers, but, based off of the last projection or the fund trend that we did, which was probably about a month ago, I think that's pretty close to accurate.
Okay.
So I'm still confused on this. I thought I understood it, and then I didn't. About 7 or 8 months ago, when we did the plan, I thought as long as in district and out of state remained the same, and the same or lower than out of district, we were fine. And then a couple people corrected me and said it needs to remain at the 1-to-1 ratio. But now we have somebody, an example that used, it's 2-to-2. So,
Exactly.
Yeah,
Does it, yeah.
There's one district who does 2-to-2, so we can charge ourselves as much as we charge out of district if we wanted. But what most counties do is there's a 121, 153, 150. Poster 242, 121, 242, 153, 150. They're all in that ratio except for the 222.
So in our case, we're 121. You can't just bring out of state up to 2,
Has
but
to
you
match.
could do in district, which I don't want to do, but in district up to 2 without touching out of state.
Do 221. You just can't charge out of state more than you charge yourself.
Okay, so if you, right. Okay, but out of district can't be more than double the in district, is that,
Right.
okay,
That's,
all right, that makes sense, okay.
How much would it bring in if we did the 153, 150?
all right, those numbers.
Right.
So
Yeah.
total revenue, yeah, would be about 5.4 million. But that would be including what, the 3.6 that were,
But if our plan is to build up to 3 of these ASP systems, then we're gonna need at least 7 million times 3. So we really do.
If we're building them. If the private sector doesn't step in and say they will build them,
That's true, yeah.
yes.
Because we're basically saying we're looking for land to buy and then you
Yes.
put an RFP out and then hope they come in and also do the construction. I feel like that's risky. So I mean, that's to your point.
Risky in what way?
Like getting the land or raising the tipping fees to get land and then expecting or banking on someone else to come in and do all the construction and all that stuff on the lease.
We have the opportunity just to raise the money now.
No, I would say the opposite. Let's get it in hand and then fund it. Instead of raising the fee, hoping that we're gonna get something.
That's my
From private sector, yeah,
Yeah.
it's the opposite.
Does
of
this
Stashing it away.
include potential construction of any organic sites?
No.
So this is just status quo right now.
Yeah.
So that to me says if we want to continue just doing what we are doing, we're gonna need to raise the fees.
Yeah.
Period.
Just a matter of degree.
Yeah.
And timing.
Yeah.
And if we're gonna do it and also do this organics piece, we probably should do that all at the same time.
Yeah.
And not piecemeal it. Cause I don't wanna do this twice. So get an understanding of this cost, that cost, and then what does that mean by way of fee?
But there are levers we can pull to slow the spending, and if we're
Yeah.
giving money away, we
Yeah.
stop giving money away and we raise the spending.
And then we flatten back out.
I was gonna say, I mean.
Yeah.
Back a year or so ago, we started this downward trend by doing what Greg's talking about, the $500,000 and stuff. We could stop that.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to continue and then that's not gonna be going downward like it is.
Or even reduce it to 300,000 and
Yeah.
stretch us out to 2027 or
That's right.
some variation of that.
Okay.
I'm really curious, I don't know how hard it would be and to survey the communities that would be voting and just sense their level of interest.
Yeah.
I mean, we're having this conversation, it sounds like at least some of the committee members are interested in raising fees, but if we don't have any interest from the communities we serve, then we should probably start thinking more conservatively in how we're spending.
Well, and
Well, I mean, or we go ahead and we make the resolution to increase the fees and then we'll get their feedback.
Yeah.
I'm personally not so.
Yeah, no.
well, and then, so one other thing is if we do sort of, again, try to sort of sell this to the communities before we make a resolution. One of the things we also ought to point out, besides just the increase, is what the benefits are. And I think if we don't do an increase, we're gonna lose a lot of the footing that we've already gained over the last however many years since you guys have been doing, you know, the impact grants and things like that. And one thing that I was a little concerned when I was kind of looking through the list of, and that spreadsheet that you sent out, was that there are a lot of wealthier schools, wealthier neighborhoods that are availing themselves of the funding and not a lot of the low income areas. Especially because they don't have a grant writer to write the grant. So if there's a way to maybe have additional funding to help some of them, I know you guys have done that in the past already, but if there's a way to increase that so that everybody kind of gets the fair shake. Their part of the pot of the funds that are raised, so that everybody sees a benefit, that would be helpful.
It's the same with the recycle funds.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
lower income communities can't
Yeah.
get recycle rewards because they can't start for recycle.
Same with our community grants.
Yeah.
It's the same with everything.
Yeah.
You just need to
Yeah.
have the capacity.
yeah.
Okay, so for our next meeting, do you have an understanding of what?
Got a big to-do list.
Okay.
So I have one question. Are you asking that we put together a plan of what a fee increase would be spent on? Or is this do we need a fee increase and then the plan comes after the August?
I think if you guys can put together a rough plan, maybe with some wiggle room of like, okay, we like that part, we don't like this part. And some dollar signs next to those, so that we can say, okay, if these are all the things that we would want to commit to, this is what it's gonna cost. And then this is what we would potentially have to raise the fee to be able to pay for all of that. And then that would be, something that we could send out to the communities too, just to say, this is what we're talking about.
If you could tell us how they're gonna vote.
And what would next steps look like on widening the search for land? Is that,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah.
I do wanna reinforce that caveat though with both zoning and ownership. Because I think that's, if Centrica was gonna be owned, that land, whatever they did was gonna be owned by St. Bernard. I don't think that would have flown because that's a huge jet, that's a huge income for the localities who are, by the way, really hurting, and then maybe come November are gonna be just disband if we don't have property taxes.
And what's that look like? Are we talking about buying land before all the public comment periods and before the public has a chance to weigh in on whether they want a facility per the solid waste plan that requires public comment about new facilities? Then do we own land that we hear public comments say that they don't want the facility in their community? It's complicated. I don't think it's easy. And our new plan actually adds additional complexity with citing, and you guys have to review the citing for the plan that we adopted.
Yeah, I think, that the barriers are the land and location. And most of these compost operators that I've been working with are really small startups. They're not, in my opinion, unlikely to come with a whole bunch of money, but are gonna be happy to operate this and probably pay for that land and that equipment over time. So I think we're gonna probably, in my opinion, think that we're gonna need to have the startup money. In the plan, and then, and then I guess, do we have a consensus on the plan? Is it that do we just want one of these, or do we want all three that were recommended?
I would say for that one at a time.
I would
And see how it goes.
start with one and.
Yeah. And
So,
I don't know, I mean, so we've kind of been talking about, sort of private companies coming in and doing things. A lot of the organizations that are doing that already are nonprofits. And I don't want to kind of discount what they've already worked on and what their potential plans are. So if there's a way to kind of have an in-between where maybe the county gives money to them to continue operating, to expand operating capacity. Maybe again, kind of what Julie was saying, if the county owns the land for a certain time, but then eventually.
I like the lease
Queen
that
City
owns it,
Commons owns it.
Yeah, it
Instead
isn't
of
private to
something.
just be for profit.
Yeah.
And private's for profit, not for profit.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
There's a place outside of Indianapolis, is it called Caldwell's? It's a compost facility. In Go Zero, is it Go Zero that works with Wyoming?
Yeah.
And the problem with this is scalability. In Wyoming, you go to one central location and what do they have, like 6 bins that Go Zero picks up?
Yeah.
That makes it, that creates an economy of scale where it's easier to do.
Yeah.
So I think, not, for me, not out of the realm is subsidizing something to deliver it somewhere else rather than buy a whole piece of land too. And then you can do it, then you can have kind of a proof proof of concept.
All right, well, let's get something that we can all
Yeah.
get our arms around.
So can I, just what you want. So what do the next steps look like on an expanded site search? An analysis of the fee increase, what we are currently funding and what we would need to increase the fees to match what we're currently funding, and then, you know, what we need to increase to get to other, additional spends for organics. And then a plan for spending that additional organics, kind of a menu of options of these would be some.
Can I have one more ask? You give us a recommendation on if we ask for a balanced budget, what programs you would cut to allow us to have a balanced budget?
Do all that in one page. I like one page.
Use the grid, right, use the grid. All right, thank you all, thanks, Michelle. All right, let's move on to informational items, waste reduction innovation grant update.
Yes.
There we go.
So, the last two attachments, I can go through them both at the same time if I to from my stack. The first one is just the attachment D is the waste reduction innovation grants that we funded since February. Sorry, find my packet. There. So I'll just go over them quickly. We have a really great partnership with the City of Cincinnati Health Department. If they're calling it freeze and feed. We previously, last year, had funded 2 freezers in a partnership with LeSoup. LeSoup stocks it, and people can get frozen meals from it. They're wanting to expand that to Hartwell and Winton Hills Recreation Center, so we've funded that. And that's a partnership with LeSoup and Food for the Soul. The City of Deer Park is improving the recycling or creating recycling in their main park, Chamberlain Park, and are investing in that and using city staff to collect those recyclables. Green Umbrella, which is the kind of organization that Common Orchard Project lives in, requested funding for a concrete pad shelter compost bag for the Camp Washington site that we were just talking about. It's owned by the Board of County Commissioners. Mount Airy Community Urban Redevelopment, they were purchasing materials to build a small community compost bin and some kitchen collectors for the gardeners at their community garden. The group that provides food service for the Cincinnati Zoo, which is called the SSA Group, applied for and received funding to do some pretty sharp looking waste sorting stations at the zoo in their restaurants. A group called Winds Green Accelerator applied for a grant to do some sneakers and like gym shoe recycling and possible reuse collections tied in with mostly local high school athletic events. So very, very interesting project. And then the Xavier Jesuit Academy applied for a dishwasher and reusable material for their kitchens. And since it's only 2, I'll go through attachment E as well, which is just the final reports from the 2022 infrastructure grants for the Colerain Township food scrap drop-off and Joan King to help support their waste reduction with a baler and a forklift. Any questions?
Questions? Okay, thank you, Michelle. All right, we're on to our upcoming meeting, which you can see is August 20th at 3 o'clock here. Yeah, very good. Is there anything else that we have not covered?
What is your move gonna be completed?
The move from here?
Yeah,
Different times.
okay.
Yeah,
Oh, thank you.
yeah.
I saw the for sale sign and there you look. That was a good giveaway for me.
Guys, let us know. We've got a couple properties. Okay, anybody else have anything? All right, I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thanks. I just wanted to get-
This is an anchor thing, I mean, on a clay.